Hello, everyone. Hi, a warm welcome to all of our partners joining the session, as well as to all of my SAP colleagues. My name is Miriam, and I will be your moderator of the session today. So prior starting, I would just like to share some housekeeping information with you. First of all, this session is being recorded, and all recordings can be found after the training on the landing page. And second of all, we reserved some time for some Q&A for you. So to post your questions, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and please refrain from using the chat function for that. And with that, I'm happy to hand over to our product owner, Wolfram Schick, who will give us now an update and share some insight about advanced available to promise in SAP S4HANA 2021. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As I was introduced, my name is Wolfram Schick. Thank you for joining today. I apologize for my voice. It's breaking sometimes, but I hope it will last the next 60 minutes. Okay, I have several topics, and I will concentrate on the deltas to the 2020 release. So I will show you what's new with 2021. I don't have an overview, but we will mainly cover the following topics. We will start with product allocation. So the well-known, I would say the well-known basic method, in addition to the product availability check. Then we will continue with supply protection, which is an extension to the product availability check. This was already delivered the first time, 2020, so last year. But I got so many questions in this year what this is all about, so that here I might leave the what's new course or the delta course a little bit and give a short overview about what supply protection is all about, in order so that you can follow and appreciate what is the delta. And then we will continue with backorder processing, well-known functionality. Here we have just smaller round-offs, I would say. And then I would cover the topic of ABC, alternative-based confirmation. Here we have already something with 2020, but with 2021, we really do a leap forward, I would say, with regards to support of not just plant substitution like we did last year, but also product and storage location substitution, and all that based on new master data. And I hope that I will be able to wrap up being in time to show you the latest feature of the review availability check results. So the display of the ATP check result, which is, I would say, some kind of a highlight, because it really shows that Fiori, what can be done with Fiori if you use it rightly. If you don't have any questions, then I would directly dive into what's new, the delta to 2020. With the product allocation. So we will look into several topics. In the new product allocation, we have a new backward consumption strategy. We will, I will show you the Fiori app of managed product allocation planning data, where we have introduced a new comment column as feedback from customers that they wanted to be able to explain a bit more what they are maintaining. We support scheduling agreements, or to be more precisely, sales scheduling agreements, but still without the delivery schedule, so without call-offs. The call-offs will hopefully come then next year. And we have also enhanced the possibility for the activation a little bit, so that we can do this now on the material availability date, not just on a requested delivery date. And we finally have introduced some bodies where you can manipulate the product allocation time series according to your needs. So a new consumption strategy was introduced. As you might know, the consumption strategy is on the sequence level. And here we had in the past backward, then forward. But now what we allow is backward with earliest first. So to visualize this, I hope you can you see my cursor? Or maybe I take the laser pointer. I think with the laser pointer you can see it better.
Yes, we can see Wolfram.
So here you see the pivot button, so the requested date. And in the past, we had the lower level, we had backward then forward, but the backward consumption of the product allocation quantities was relatively to the pivot, so to a request. And so we consumed, let's say, the product allocation quantities which were nearest to the request first, even if we went backwards. But for some businesses, they say, no, if we maintain a product allocation, we want the oldest to be consumed first, because this we want to consume, let's say, from oldest to newest. And this is what we introduced now as a new consumption strategy, which is seen above here. So if you say backward then forward, but oldest first or earliest first, what we do with regards to consumption, we jumped to the earliest. Here, this are the different buckets with the product allocation quantities, and the oldest is first, yeah. And so we jump to the very oldest and then start consuming. If we have this 10 here, we start consuming the 5 in this earliest bucket first, and then we would approaching today's date from the past, and only then go into the future. And in the past, what we did is that we started with yesterday and then the day before yesterday, and so go back to reach the earliest. So a nice new enhancement, which was requested by many customers. This is the new comment functionality that I have told you on the product allocation planning data on a CDC level. CDC stands for characteristic value combinations. So where you actually maintain the quantities. Here we have introduced now a comment field where you can somehow say what this quantities, what this time series that you maintain is meant for. This makes it easier if you, especially if in your organization, the responsibility maybe is shared to maintain this data. This comment field comes in very handy. Also was a request of customer. This is the support of scheduling agreements. Until now, scheduling agreements or the requirements out of scheduling agreements have not been able to do product allocation, to do PAL, product allocation. And obviously, since scheduling agreements compete often for the very same stocks and supplies like the normal sales order, this was some kind of a gap, missing functionality that for customers who use both scheduling agreement and normal sales orders and stock transfer orders, this was really a pain. And now we have done the first step into the support of scheduling agreements. As I said, currently scheduling agreements only without the call-offs, without delivery schedules, but hopefully this year then including sales scheduling agreements with call-offs. Also, we not just support this somewhere in the back end, also in the front end, we have nicely integrated it now so that you can, as you can see here, in the maintenance, you can directly jump to the scheduling agreement. So it's completely integrated into the PAL setup and maintenance streams as you know it already from the other document types. Also, some kind of a round-off that we introduced for the PAL is the activation, now based on the material availability date. In the past, this was only possible on the requested delivery date. Now you can choose between requested delivery date and material availability date. And if you then have also validities on your on the activation, these are also then compared with that. This has nothing to do with the consumption. The consumption, as you know, the PAL quantities when you consume it, there you had already the possibility to say it's on the material availability date, on the requested date, on the goods issue date even. But this is based and maintained on the level of the product allocation object. Here we are really talking about the activation, so when the PAL should be executed and the comparison to the validities. So here we have introduced now this new option with the material availability date. And here the first bodies. This might be very technical. I don't know if the audience has this technical background, but just to let me give an idea, with this new body, then you can now actually influence and manipulate the result or the product allocation time series itself. So it's really nice. If you are not satisfied, let's say, with the result of a product allocation check, you can now manipulate this according to your own custom specific logic. This is the first body. We will in the future also introduce additional ones. Yeah, this is the first step into this direction. The product allocation check, I would say, with 2021 has reached now a very, very decent level of maturity. So we dare now to start offering bodies, and with 2022 I think we will add even additional ones. Okay, this was everything with regards to the product allocation. I will now continue with the supply protection, but as I said, with the supply protection, I would first give an overview about what supply protection is, since it's a quite new functionality. Let's say shipped first time last year, but there it was a very, let's say, a very rush shipment. It was not really rounded off, and some stuff was still missing when we delivered first time 2020. Therefore, I want to motivate what the supply protection is all about before I go into the deltas then. So the supply protection actually is a new feature that is incorporated into the product availability check and allows, in contrast to the product allocation, where you model some kind of an upper boundary of what confirmation is, what maximum can be confirmed. The supply protection is is able to model some kind of a minimal boundary, so a lower boundary, what should be reserved minimum for requirements with certain characteristics. Just to make a small example, if you have, for instance, different markets with and you have certain supply here, for the sake of simplicity, we just have stock. Oh, I have to activate the laser pointer again so that you see. So here we have stock. If you would model now product allocations for France, Spain, and Germany, this would be an upper boundary where you can say German customers or requirements coming from Germany must not order more than what they have. But here you see that we have some kind of an excess stock. Yeah, we have more than what is maintained for Germany, and this is exactly now the scenario for the supply protection. In the supply protection, we say for Germany, we reserve some kind of minimal that, but if we have more stock and more supply and more demands coming in, obviously we can also consume that. Here you can see this quite nicely. This is what is reserved, the restricted stock, but then we have unprotected excess stock, which can be consumed by French, Spanish, or German customers, but which can also be consumed by customers. Okay, this is this is too fast. If orders coming in from Belgium, for instance, they cannot see the product, they cannot consume the stock, which is restricted by the supply protection for the French, German, and Spanish customers, but they have to live with what is excess stock. And I just wanted to point out, if you use a supply protection, then you should use it wisely and not protect the whole stock. Because this could lead then to a situation that you have actually something on stock, but if you protect too much, then nobody can get a confirmation anymore. So This is a very, let's say, powerful tool to distribute and protect your supplies and your stock, but it should really only be used to protect a minimum. So what is the absolute, the lower boundary, what a certain customer group or a certain group of requirements should be able to order. So a minimum reservation, and it should not reserve the whole supply. Having said that, I hope you get the concept of the supply protection, and obviously it is much more sophisticated with regards to its possibilities. You can also have then a prioritization within one of these groups. For instance, within the German customers, you can have a grouping then and a prioritization. And when you are, for instance, within this German group, that then the prior one customers do not have to regard the protection from the lower ones, but obviously from the French and Spain customers, they would have to consider this. This is possible, and even it's possible to have groups with the same prioritization. So you can have a very, very sophisticated control about which kind of your stock or future supply should be reserved for certain customer groups. This is what supply protection is all about. And I will now go to the deltas to last year. Okay, this is what was new in supply protection. We have also quite a list of different topics. And I will go through them one by one. The business partner is a very relevant criteria to define protection groups. And in the first version, as I said, the initial version 2020 was a very rush shipment. And we did some basic roundoffs now. This feature actually was even downported to FPS1. That the business partner can be used in the definition of groups. The next one is that we have really done nice improvements to the UI and interfaces to make it more usable, to make it significantly more easier to maintain the quantities and have an overview about the protected quantities that you have with this detailed view that you can see above. I have to switch on the laser pointer again. You can see above and the status and the details below very nicely done. Then we have introduced some kind of an alerting mechanism. As I have shown you before, the setup of the supply protection can be quite sophisticated with the different horizontal protection and then these vertical groups, this prioritization, and even groups with the same priority within the vertical protections. So it can be quite sophisticated. And here we have now some kind of additional features and functions that warn you if you have set up and used your supply protection in a way that a requirement or a check leads to multiple hits, which often might not be what you wanted, what you have intended, because it can lead to overprotection. Here we have also a nice consumption chart introduced where you can really see what was there, as you know it from what was the protected quantity and which was consumed already in the protected quantity. And we have forward navigation into the documents which consumed it. So nice usability enhancements. Also in the setup, we have now introduced the draft concept as you know it from almost all the other applications. As I said, maybe you say, but I would have expected that from the beginning. Yes, maybe. Unfortunately, last year's shipment was a bit rushed. We have also introduced a possibility to activate or deactivate the supply protection objects, let's say time-based automatically. This is especially if you do not have to protect always, but if you have some kind of seasonality in the business, for instance, the Christmas time, where the supply might exceed your, where the demand might exceed your stocks and supplies, so that you can plan ahead with the activation and deactivation. Yeah, that comes in quite handy, I would say. One feature that was introduced now for the supply protection, which unfortunately is not there for the product allocation, but I heard it there also quite often, is to have more flexible buckets. That as you know it from other from the product allocation, you can have this daily, weekly, monthly, or quarterly buckets or whatever, but it's a fixed bucket size. Here in the supply protection, as I said, because the use case is also slightly different and it has this seasonality aspect to it, here we offer now the possibility to have a flexible bucket sizes. For instance, that you can say that, I don't know, taking the Christmas example again, that, I don't know, in the week before Christmas, that this is a special bucket, while the whole Christmas season, starting from beginning of December till the week of Christmas itself, that this is also a bucket, and so that you have here flexible bucket sizes, and you can really maintain the protection quantities very specific around certain dates. Here, consumption of material availability or requested delivery date, as you know it from PAL already there, it is there even with the goods issue date, which is currently not here. But also here we made a step forward in getting closer to the product allocation. And that was it with the round-offs and deltas to the supply protection. So my estimation now would be that the supply protection with this year's release is maybe has not reached the same level of maturity than PAL yet, but now we have reached a scope and a maturity that I can highly recommend to look into it and to start using it, because it's really a powerful tool. Okay, the next topic, as I said, is backorder processing. Backorder processing is there already since many years, and therefore we did not introduce brand new or groundbreaking new features. These are expected to come somewhere in the future when we tackle the fair share issue, but this year we have done more or less round-offs. So these are the three topics. A usability issue is that we have now the possibility to simulate each Bob variant just out of the Bob monitor. So if you are looking into your Bob runs in the Bob monitor and you are not satisfied with the result of a Bob, you can now directly go to a line and say simulate the variant, and then this variant would be simulated, which is, I think, a nice cool feature with regards to usability and integration. Furthermore, we have improved the visibility of the status and the usability also in the Bob monitor. As you can see here, the processing status is listed and visualized a little bit better than it was before. What we also have is that we have now deprecated the HANA rules framework-based filter conditions that we had in the very earliest Bob releases with 69, 79, 1809. If you have worked with the early releases, you know that we had a different tool for defining Bob segments and the selections. This was changed with 1909. We have introduced the select option tools, which has a much better usability, and it's much simpler, let's say. And with 1909 and 2009, let's say the old Bob segment definitions based on HRF could be still used in parallel, but now with 2021, for technical reasons, I mean, the basis has now completely discarded this tool, so we cannot support this anymore. So this is, let's say, not a new feature, but it's very relevant to know because there's a delta training, let's say, or delta presentation. If you have used the old Bob segment definition with 2021, you should now finally migrate to the new select option tool for the Bob segment definition, because the old ones are not supported anymore. Details can be found in the notes, which are linked here, or in diverse blog posts. We offer some kind of an automatic migration tool, but depending on the intensity, let's say, that you have used the capabilities and feature of the old HANA Rules Framework tool, we cannot guarantee that the automatism is able to automatically convert all former setups. Okay, that was it with regards to Bob. So this topic is, let's say, also a real highlight. The alternative-based confirmation, ABC. This was, let's say, in a very, very small version already delivered in the past. As you might know, the plant substitution already worked in the last release with a very simple, let's say, setup to determine the allowed plants, the alternative plants. So I would say it was a first step in the right direction, but it was not a real alternative-based confirmation, which is positioned as a successor for the rules-based ATP of APO GATP. But with this year's release, we did a huge step forward into a successor for the rules-based ATP by introducing, here I can show you, by introducing the plant and storage location substitution based on their own and powerful new master data, as well as the material substitution. The storage location substitution, by the way, was not even there in the rules-based ATP. So here we have already made some progress over the rules-based ATP in APO. Let's start from the top with the Configure Alternative Control app. The Configure Alternative Control app is the activation of the alternative-based confirmation. So this was done in a simple way based on a characteristic combination. But the first feedback from many customers was, yes, it's nice that you have this. And it's quite simple and straightforward, but it's too simple for us. We want it a bit more complicated. So yeah, with this year's release 2021, we have added additional level of complexities so that we have more or less nearly reached the same complexity level or sophistication level. Complexity sounds so negative here, as in the rules-based ATP. So you can have multiple characteristic combinations in form of accesses, like you are maybe familiar with from the old condition technique. And for the different accesses, you can have your characteristic value combinations and then find different substitution strategies. And the substitution strategy is then the central customizing collection where you can say how the alternative-based confirmation should behave. For instance, if you should do only plant substitution or plant and material substitution, and how to select the best alternative out of the list of all alternatives, and so on and so forth. What we have also introduced as a feedback from the customer is that there is an overall activation of the ABC now based on the availability checking group, which is then the ATP group is assigned to the material plant master data in the MARC. So you can now more or less have a general switch, allow ABC or not. And only if this, if ABC is allowed, ABC is active, then we actually go into the condition technique and check if for this very special requirement for this material plant combination, which is coming in if for that we find a substitution strategy and therefore look for alternatives. So this is also some kind of an ease of maintenance that you can just more or less switch it on or off on a higher level. Yeah, the highlight, as I have already said, with this year's release, we first offer the possibility to not just substitute plans, but also products. It can be used now to model some kind of upgrading or downgrading processes, or just simple supersession processes when a newer product version is substituting an older one, but the customer who orders might not be aware of it and therefore still orders the older one. So these kind of business processes are now fully supported. We still have the same concept for in the ABC as you know it, maybe from last year with the plan substitution. So we actually are able to look into all the different alternatives and actually ATP check them. And then based on the contribution of each alternative, and with alternative, I mean a material, plant and storage location combination, based on its actually availability, we can choose which one is the best. Plant and product substitution can obviously be combined, as you know it from the rules-based ATP. Here you see already how this looks like in a Bob run, and I will show you how it looks in online later. We have introduced time dependency now for the product substitution for a specific product substitution, including date and time and the time zone. The location substitution you might know already from the past. This has been enhanced now also by the storage location substitution and the storage location substitution, sorry. The storage location substitution is not just a simple substitution, it's also even a determination. So that even if you do not specify a storage location in the sales order, for instance, then you can set up the system in a way that it determines the correct storage location. So the ABC can be used for scenarios when storage location should be determined, for instance, because certain requirements which are coming in by certain sales channels or so should be handled or fulfilled out of special storage locations. Furthermore, we have introduced we have now set the plan substitution also on the new master data, where you can maintain substitution chains, but also, as you can see here, we allow the maintenance of substitution of exclusions out of these chains, and to have it more requirement specific, we can also have find substitution controls and groups which can be attached to a certain substitution A by B. And since this substitution controls and groups are found by based on the characteristic of each order, you have a very flexible tool to control which plant is allowed to be which is a valid alternative. The same is true for materials and storage locations, so which alternative is valid for a certain requirement. Here, this is how it is looking into the system. With last year's release, when you activated ABC for plants, you just could say that you want to look in all possible plants in which this material is maintained. And now, since we have introduced this new master data, you can choose this as a source for the determination of the allowed alternative plans. The storage location I have already mentioned. This is really a brand new feature and also exceeding the functionality of the rules-based ATP and APO, that we have the possibility to determine not just substitute a storage location, but also determine it in the context of an ATP check. This is a small thing where we have introduced conversion factors in product substitution. Also, this is, let's say, a net new feature, but which can come in handy if you have different material numbers for different package sizes or something like that. Then you can use this feature in order to model this. Here is a screenshot of the OVD whenever I was referring now to that certain processes depend on the characteristics of the underlying order, of the underlying requirement, and use the comparison with the condition technique. We are not using the condition technique here, but we are using a new tool, which is called Object and Value Determination, OVD. The experts might know that the OVD is based on the characteristic catalog, which is also used in the product allocation or in the supply protection. And this characteristic catalog is already quite powerful, I would say, because it has access to most of the fields of the underlying order document. Even if you extend it via set fields or so, they would show up here. So the OVD is exactly based on the same characteristic catalog, so it offers a huge flexibility here. One smaller thing, the remaining open quantity, where should this be posted? If you have multiple alternatives and even though you looked into multiple material plan combinations to fulfill your requirement, but you are not able to fulfill it out of one or even a combination of different alternatives, we have introduced a lead indicator that you can have a very fine granular control where the open requirement should be placed. Yeah. This can be done for the plants as well as for the materials. Okay, that was the ABC. And last but not least, I want to show you the new review availability check result. So this is our new delivery proposal screen, so our new explanation component for an ATP result. Here we had quite rudimentary functionality in the last releases, but with this year's release, especially with the ABC and this different differentiation between the different basic methods like product availability check, product allocation check, and supply protection, we made also here a huge step forward. So here you can see how it is displayed when we have multiple products in the ABC, how this looks like. So in this example, the toothbrush basic somehow was ordered, and you see it here in the review availability check result that this is a strike through, let's say, and we have the additional information that the original requirement is now fulfilled by multiple products, and if you then extend this line, then you see the list of products which all contribute here in this example to the confirmation. Also here we see that you can and have a nice overview and see the details in here, different alternatives which contributed to the overall confirmation. This is still, let's say, a bit old school. So you have a requested product and you have the alternatives, and you see this inside of kind of a table and some kind of a list. But what I show you next is the real big new thing. This is some kind of a detailed and also a bit graphically supported explanation about how the availability check itself really worked out, and the different check methods, how they contributed to the result or restricted the overall confirmation. So how is this read? We start on the left-hand side. Sorry, I have to activate the laser pointer again. We start on the left-hand side with the original request, and then we have these different symbols. This arrow is the symbol that we were looking for different alternatives. And here we see that we have exchanged the plant, AK03 by AK01. So we looked in two different plants. And here we see the different check steps. This dollar sign is a sign for the sales product allocation. Here we can see what the sales product allocation has contributed. And the color code here is also indicating that the sales allocation did not restrict the result of 1,000 pieces in both of the plants. Then we have the product allocation check, which is represented by this package symbol here. And here we see that the confirmation is different. Yeah, in plant, this very material in the one plant has only 76 pieces, and the second 100 pieces. And then we see the third check, the capacity pile check, which in this case also was not restricting. And then we see how the end result was combined out of the different results. And we see that we chose both plants to finally confirm. And even here, I'm not sure if I have a different slide for it, we can then, within the pack, we can have additional details and even jump into the supply protection details if supply protection was part of the pack. So here I think for the first time, we never had that in APO either. We have a really nice overview that explains why the final ATP results is the way like it is, and which different building blocks or which sub-algorithms or features and function has led to the final result. What do we see here? If we have ADC active, and you know that in the alternative-based confirmation, we have these different strategies to choose which is the best alternative. And this can be based on one-time confirmation or full confirmation or max earlier confirmation. If you have chosen in your setup that in this case, you only accept on-time confirmations, for instance, then the different alternatives are also displayed in Raqqa, so that you can see what other, let's say, definition of what's best would have been resulted in confirmation, and so you can actually then choose a different confirmation interactively. Then you have set up and maintained in your customizing or in your ABC setup. So this is also a kind of flexibility and interoperability that was never there before. Very nice feature. This shows now that you can even drill down out of the different steps into even more detail. I think you have to play around with it a bit in order to really appreciate and how this all looks like. Here, for instance, it's a jump into the product allocation check result. So this is a more complex product allocation example. I think I will not go through everything, but as you might know, in product allocation, you can have multiple constraints, which can be combined with and or conditions and so on and so forth. And actually, what you can do in this new review availability check result, you press here on the button, you get the this pop-up where you see the summary, let's say, of the result. And if you go to show details, then you really have a full-blown explanation component, even not just which basic method has contributed what, but even within the basic method here, we can really drill down here on the product allocation object level and see which object has contributed how much. And even the consumption periods, if you remember, I started with the pivot and so on, even the consumption period can be drilled down to. Okay. The same is true for supply protection. Yeah, that's it. Okay. How are we in the time? How much time do we have? 11:15.
We still have a little bit of time left for some questions, Wolfram. First of all, thank you very much for sharing this broad overview and those updates with us, especially despite the fact that you are facing these difficulties with your voice. So thank you very much for that. And with that, I think we can switch to the questions. Wolfram, do you want to take over?
Okay, can you still see my screen?
Yes, we can still see your screen.
And will you be able to elaborate? Actually, what we are doing, we are developing in almost all cases in a cloud-first approach. So whatever I have shown you here is also available in the cloud. Yes. So what I have shown you here is also available in the cloud. There are some specialities or there will be some specialities in the future when it comes to supply creation-based confirmation, which will be shipped next year. This will be on-prem only. And if we look into supply assignment features, which is an afterburner of the Bob run, here there might be restrictions with regards to cloud, but everything what I showed you here, so everything with regards to product availability check, supply protection, product allocation check, back order processing, ABC, this is all also available in the cloud. So this has been answered then about supply protection, horizontal protection. Is it only country? No, it's not only country. It's, as I said, supply protection is like the product allocation based on a characteristic, on the characteristic catalog. So you can use almost all kinds of features and attributes from the requirement to choose which protection bucket or protection quantity can be found. So it's very flexible tool that can be used. The number of characteristics that is restricted though. So you cannot use 15 different characteristics. So the number of characteristics is so the combination, let's say, that you use at the same time is restricted, but the number of different possible characteristics that you can choose from, that is very huge. These are hundreds. Was this clear? Does ABC take into account difference in quality? Choose quality A if quality B is not available. I would need more information how the quality is if this is different, if this is different material numbers, then obviously it could be done. If it's the same material which has just different characteristics, then this is not taken into account. So what we do not have in ABC currently, what you might refer to from rules-based ATP, that you have this characteristic substitution for configurable materials. This is currently not there yet, I would say. In how far does ATP take variant configuration? Okay, I think I just told it. This variant configuration characteristics are not supported in ABC. The variant configuration characteristics are known, for instance, in product allocation, where you can use these characteristics, but I think length, what you just gave it as an example here, does not really make sense for product allocation. There's some kind of a quality grade, for instance, would more make sense with regards to product allocation. For instance, that you can restrict that, for instance, an outlet store gets too many grade A stuff or something like that. For things like that, it could be used, but the length, I'm now lacking a bit to think about how this can be used in product allocation. About ABC with alternative confirmation should be chosen always manually to determine that. Maybe you got it wrong. You don't have to choose manually. I mean, the system is choosing the best alternative according to your setup up in ABC. It's just that if you have a human sitting in front of the system and looking at the result, he would see what other strategies for and definition of what is best would have, to which result they would have led, and you can overrule what the system is choosing automatically. But if you do nothing, or just say yes, then the alternatives will be chosen as you have set it up in the ABC master data. And the same is true with Bob. I mean, in Bob, there is no human in front of the system. So in Bob, always the settings or the setup of the master data will be chosen. So no interaction necessary. Bob is able to manage sub-items generated in it also the case of sub-items to sales bombs. Jean-Marie, can you explain that? I mean,
we are not able to unmute our participants.
So, I mean, Bob is able to manage sub-items shown by ABC. Yes, in Bob you can also select the sub-items into of a sales bomb, because these are normal requirements. But if you have sub-items, regardless if it's Bob or not, if you have a sales order with sub-item, for instance, a sales bomb, then you cannot do material substitution, for instance, on this, which would lead to additional sub-items. That's currently not possible, but this, I have to say, is not a limitation out of the ATP area, it's a limitation out of the sales order area. The sales order currently, the structure of the sales order does not support sub-items on sub-items. And therefore, we from ATP, if we get a requirement in, which is already a sub-item, we have to deactivate all the features and functions which would lead or which could possibly lead to additional sub-items. Therefore, in Bob, we can select sub-items, yes, and handle them and reconfirm them, but we are not able to do an ABC on top of it, so an alternative-based confirmation.
Thank you, Wolfram. All questions has been answered. Thank you very much again for sharing all these insights with us. And we are at the top of the hour, so I think with that we can close this session. Thank you very much.